Everyone thinks they understand human nature, but beneath every conversation, every relationship, every decision lies machinery most people never see. The mind follows rules you weren't taught in school. It operates on frequencies invisible to those who've never looked closely. Before we expose the psychological patterns that secretly run your life, hit that like button and subscribe, because what you're about to learn will permanently change how you see yourself and everyone around you. 1. Your brain makes decisions 7 seconds before you consciously realize it. Scientists can predict your choices by watching brain activity while you still think you're deciding. Free will feels real, but your unconscious mind has already committed. That sense of choosing in the moment is your consciousness catching up to what your brain already decided. You're not the author of your choices. You're the narrator pretending you were in control all along. 2. People who apologize too much are usually trauma survivors. Excessive sorry saying isn't politeness. It's a defense mechanism learned early. When you grow up around volatile people, you learn to apologize for existing to avoid conflict. It becomes automatic. Adults who constantly apologize are still operating like the environment is dangerous. They're diffusing threats that no longer exist. The apology is a shield from a war that ended years ago. 3. Your phone is deliberately designed to be as addictive as a slot machine. Every notification triggers a dopamine hit. Every refresh is a gamble on what you'll find. Tech companies hired psychologists to humans can only maintain about 5 close friendships at a time. Your brain has limited capacity for deep emotional bonds. Beyond 5 intimate relationships, something has to give. That's why old friendships fade when new ones form. It's not personal failure, it's neurological limitation. The brain simply can't hold more than a handful of people in the inner circle. Quality always beats quantity, because biology won't allow both. 5. The way you were treated as a child becomes your internal voice as an adult. Critical parents create critical self-talk. Supportive parents create supportive inner dialogue. That harsh voice in your head judging your every move isn't really you. It's someone else's voice you internalized so deeply you think it's your own. Most people spend their lives arguing with ghosts from childhood that now live permanently inside their minds. 6. People who overshare with strangers are often desperately lonely. When someone tells their life story to a cashier or stranger on a train, they're not extroverted. They're starving for connection. Oversharing is a cry for intimacy from someone who has none. They're testing if anyone will finally listen. The more someone reveals to people who don't matter, the fewer people they have who actually do. 7. Your body keeps score of every trauma, even when your mind forgets. Chronic pain, digestive issues, autoimmune disorders, they often trace back to unprocessed emotional wounds. The body remembers what the conscious mind suppresses. That mysterious back pain might be rage you never expressed. That stomach issue might be fear you swallowed. The body doesn't lie. It stores what you refuse to feel until it forces you to pay attention. 8. Being too nice is often fear disguised as kindness. People pleasers aren't naturally generous, they're terrified of rejection. They've learned that their value depends on usefulness to others. Saying no feels like risking abandonment. Their kindness isn't free, it's purchased with their own needs constantly sacrificed. Nice people aren't weak, they're exhausted from a lifetime of earning love they should have received unconditionally. 9. Narcissists don't actually have high self-esteem, they have none. All that grandiosity is compensation for deep shame. They need constant validation because internally they feel worthless. The inflated ego is a mask over a collapsed sense of self. That's why criticism destroys them. It cracks the illusion they desperately need to survive. Arrogance isn't confidence, it's terror of being seen as small. 10. Your brain can't tell the difference between social media likes and real accomplishment. Dopamine fires the same way for both. That's why scrolling feels productive when you've done nothing. Your ancient reward system thinks social approval equals survival success. Every like registers as tribal acceptance. You're not shallow for caring about reactions online. Your brain genuinely believes digital validation equals real-world safety. 11. People who grew up without emotional safety become hyper-independent adults. They learned early that needing others meant disappointment or danger, so they built walls and called it strength. They handle everything alone, not because they're capable, but because asking for help feels like a threat. Independence isn't always power. Sometimes it's just childhood survival strategy that never got updated. 12. Chronic lateness is usually anxiety, not disrespect. People who are always late often spend hours preparing but can't leave until everything feels perfect. Or they dread the interaction so much they subconsciously delay. It's not about valuing their time more than yours. It's their nervous system making simple tasks feel impossible. Chronic lateness is often undiagnosed executive dysfunction or avoidance behaviour gone out of control. 13. The more someone insists they're fine, the more they're usually falling apart. "I'm okay" repeated too forcefully means I'm drowning but can't admit it. People who genuinely feel fine don't need to convince you. Excessive reassurance is a red flag that something is very wrong. The louder the claim of stability, the closer someone is to collapse. Fine is the most dangerous lie people tell. 14. Your childhood emotional neglect shows up as adult perfectionism. When love was conditional on achievement, you learned your worth depends on performance. Now you can't rest because rest feels like losing value. Perfectionism isn't about high standards. It's about the terror of being unlovable if you're not flawless. The impossibly high bar you set isn't ambition. It's the price you still think you have to pay to deserve existence. 15. People who seem emotionally cold are often the ones who feel too much. They learned early that showing emotion meant punishment or being taken advantage of. So they built ice around a core that's actually burning. The shutdown isn't absence of feeling, it's overflow that got frozen to survive. Emotional unavailability is frequently just emotional overwhelm that learned to hide. 16. Your gut feelings are your subconscious processing millions of data points instantly. That instinct about someone isn't magic. It's your brain detecting micro-expressions, tone shifts, and behavioral patterns faster than consciousness can track. Intuition is pattern recognition happening below awareness. When something feels off, your ancient survival system has already calculated danger. Trust your gut because it's actually your wisest brain working faster than thought. 17. People who joke about their trauma are often still trapped in it. Humor is how they make the unbearable bearable. The laugh is a pressure release valve on pain they can't fully process. Every joke is a confession, disguised as entertainment. The person making everyone laugh about dark topics is usually the one suffering most. Comedy isn't healing, it's coping. The jokes stop when the pain finally gets addressed. 18. Children of alcoholics become adults who overfunction in chaos. They learn to manage unstable environments. Young. Now they're calm in crisis, but anxious in peace. They don't trust calm because calm always preceded the storm in childhood. They unconsciously create drama because chaos feels like home. Stability feels dangerous because they never learned to exist in it safely. 19. The person you're angriest at is usually showing you a part of yourself you refuse to see. We don't hate traits in others unless they mirror something we've rejected in ourselves. That rage you feel is actually self-recognition you can't accept. The things that trigger you most are reflections of your shadow. Either people are mirrors, and anger is what happens when you don't like what you see. 20. People who say yes to everything are actually saying no to themselves. Constant availability to others means constant abandonment of your own needs. Yes, people aren't generous, they're terrified. They've learned that boundaries equal rejection. So they sacrifice themselves repeatedly, hoping it will finally earn them the love they crave. But love earned through self-betrayal isn't love at all. 21. Your anxiety isn't broken thinking, it's your nervous system stuck in survival mode. The racing thoughts aren't the problem, they're the symptom. Somewhere your body registered a threat and never turned off the alarm. Anxiety isn't in your head, it's in your nervous system. You can't think your way out because it's not a thought problem, it's a body problem. Calm won't come from convincing your mind, it comes from convincing your body that the danger has passed. 22. People who ghost you are avoiding their own guilt and discomfort. Disappearing is easier than having a hard conversation. They're not cruel, they're cowardly. Ghosting is choosing their momentary comfort over your lasting confusion. It says nothing about your worth and everything about their inability to handle awkwardness. You didn't do anything wrong. You just met someone who prioritizes avoidance over decency. 23. Being calm during chaos usually means you've survived worse. People who don't panic in crisis aren't naturally brave, they're trauma-trained. Their nervous systems know this territory. The calm is familiarity, not courage. They learn to function through disaster because breaking down wasn't an option. That eerie composure isn't strength, it's scar tissue. They're not unbothered, they're just experienced with horror. 24. Your anger is often just grief wearing armor. Rage feels safer than sadness, because sadness makes you vulnerable. Anger gives you energy and control. Grief makes you collapse. So the mind converts loss into fury, because fury feels like power. Beneath most rage is heartbreak that hasn't been given permission to be felt. Anger is the bodyguard grief hires to avoid being touched. 25. People who never talk about themselves are often hiding deep shame. They deflect every personal question, not because they're private, but because they believe their truth is too damaged to share. The deflection is protection. They've learned that being known means being rejected. So they stay mysterious, ask all the questions, keep everyone at arm's length. The less they reveal, the safer they feel from judgment. 26. Overachievers are usually running from a sense of worthlessness. The constant hustle isn't ambition, it's terror of stopping. If they pause, they'll feel the emptiness they're sprinting away from. Achievement is the drug that temporarily makes them feel valuable, but it never lasts, so they need another hit. Success doesn't fill the void because the void isn't about accomplishment. It's about never feeling inherently enough. 27. The silent treatment is emotional abuse disguised as self-control. Withholding communication punishes without accountability. It's not taking space to cool down, it's weaponizing absence. The silence says you're not worth basic respect. It activates the same brain regions as physical pain. People who use silence as punishment know exactly what they're doing. It's control masked as maturity. 28. Your childhood attachment style predicts your adult relationship patterns. Anxious attachment creates people who cling and need constant reassurance. Avoidant attachment creates people who flee intimacy and need excessive space. Secure attachment creates people who can be close without losing themselves. Most relationship problems aren't about the current partner. They're about wounds from the first people who are supposed to love you unconditionally. 29. People who constantly play devil's advocate often just enjoy conflict. It's not intellectual curiosity, it's contrarianism disguised as critical thinking. They're not seeking truth, they're seeking the rush of argument. Every conversation becomes a debate because peace bores them. The need to oppose everything is often just unprocessed anger looking for an outlet. They don't want discussion, they want combat. 30. Your comfort zone isn't keeping you safe, it's keeping you small. The brain resists change because the unknown feels dangerous, but staying stuck is its own danger. Growth lives outside comfort, and your nervous system will fight growth every step. The anxiety you feel when pushing boundaries isn't warning, it's growing pains. Discomfort isn't damage, it's evolution. Your fear of change is just your old self refusing to die. 31. People who need to be right all the time are deeply insecure. The inability to admit mistakes comes from fragile self-worth. Being wrong feels like being worthless to them, so they twist reality, move goalposts, gaslight, anything to avoid the shame of imperfection. The need to win every argument isn't confidence, it's terror of being seen as flawed. Secure people can be wrong because their value isn't on trial. 32. Your depression might be anger you've turned inward. When expressing anger wasn't safe growing up, you learned to direct it at yourself instead. Now that rage has nowhere to go but down. Depression isn't always sadness. Sometimes it's self-directed fury. The cruelty you show yourself is often the cruelty you weren't allowed to show others. Releasing that anger outward appropriately can lift depression that therapy alone couldn't touch. 33. Being overly logical is often a defense against feeling. People who intellectualize everything are avoiding their emotions, not transcending them. Logic feels safe because feelings feel chaotic, but analyzing emotions isn't the same as experiencing them. Over-rationality is emotional avoidance dressed in intelligence. The head can't heal what the heart needs to feel. Thinking about your feelings isn't processing them. 34. People who always need to be busy are running from themselves. The hustle culture isn't productivity, it's avoidance. If they slow down, they'll have to face it, what they've been outrunning. The packed schedule is a distraction from inner emptiness. Rest feels threatening because silence brings awareness. Busyness is the socially acceptable way to never deal with your life. 35. Your fear of abandonment creates the abandonment you fear. Anxious clinging pushes people away. Constant testing of loyalty makes people tired. The hypervigilance for signs they're leaving actually drives them to leave. You're creating the outcome you're terrified of through the very behaviours meant to prevent it. The abandonment isn't random, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy your fear keeps engineering. 36. Passive-aggressive behaviour is anger from someone afraid to be direct. The sarcasm, the subtle digs, the weaponized incompetence, it's all rage in disguise. They learned that expressing anger directly wasn't safe, so it comes out sideways. Passive aggression is cowardice and hostility merged. It lets them hurt you while maintaining deniability. It's violence committed by people too scared to throw an honest punch. 37. Your need for control is really fear of chaos. Control freaks aren't organized, they're traumatized. Somewhere they learned that letting go meant disaster. Now they micromanage everything to feel safe. But control is an illusion, and the tighter you grip, the more anxious you become. The need to control everything is just childhood powerlessness, still running the show decades later. 38. People who romanticize their trauma haven't healed from it. Turning suffering into identity prevents recovery. When your pain becomes your personality, healing feels like losing yourself. The trauma bond to your own story keeps you stuck. You can't let go of what hurt you, because then who would you be? Romanticizing suffering is just another way to avoid doing the work, to release it. 39. Your fear of success is often fear of outgrowing the people you love. Success means change, and change threatens belonging. You stay small to stay connected. Achieving more means leaving people behind, and loneliness feels more terrifying. You self-sabotage. 40. Emotional flashbacks feel like current emotions, but they're past wounds re-triggered. That disproportionate reaction isn't about now, it's then bleeding into today. Your nervous system time-traveled to a moment you thought you'd forgotten. The intensity doesn't match the situation because the situation isn't what you're actually responding to. You're not overreacting. You're reacting to a different event entirely that your body suddenly remembered. 41. People who never ask for help don't trust people to show up. Somewhere they learned that needing others meant disappointment or danger, so they became self-reliant to the point of isolation. Independence became survival. But refusing help isn't strength, it's protection from a vulnerability that once destroyed them. They're not capable, they're just still terrified. 42. Your social battery draining quickly might be trauma, not introversion. If socializing exhausts you, it could be hypervigilance, not personality. Constantly scanning for threats, managing others' emotions, masking your real self. That's not introversion, that's unprocessed fear. Real introverts recharge alone peacefully. Traumatized people collapse alone from the energy it took to feel safe around others. 43. The person who triggers you most is usually your greatest teacher. They're showing you exactly what you need to heal. The rage, the obsession, the inability to let them go, it's all pointing to your unfinished work. They're not your enemy. They're a mirror reflecting what you refuse to see in yourself. The trigger is the lesson disguised as a villain. 44. Your productivity guilt is capitalism living inside your head. The belief that rest is laziness isn't natural, it's conditioned. You've been taught your worth equals your output, so rest feels like moral failure. But you're not a machine. Exhaustion isn't weakness. The guilt you feel for resting is just internalized exploitation telling you that being human isn't enough. 45. People who can't handle your success were never really your friends. Real friends celebrate your wins. Insecure people feel threatened by them. Your growth exposes their stagnation, and they resent you for it. The friendship was conditional on you staying at their level. The moment you rise, they either rise with you or try to pull you back down. Most pull down. 46. Your overthinking is your brain trying to control the uncontrollable. You can't think your way to certainty about the future. The mental loops are an attempt to prepare for every possibility, but they just create more anxiety. Overthinking feels productive, but it's actually paralysis. The thoughts aren't solving anything. They're avoiding acceptance that you can't know what's coming and that terrifies you. 47. Being too sensitive is often having nervous system damage from invalidation. You weren't born fragile. You were made fragile by people who punished your emotions. Now everything feels like too much because your alarm system is broken. Sensitivity isn't weakness, it's injury. You're not overreacting, you're still reacting to a lifetime of being told your feelings were wrong. 48. Your need to fix everyone is avoiding fixing yourself. Helper types focus on others' problems to escape their own. Saving people feels noble, but it's often just distraction. You can't sit with your own pain, so you drown in theirs. The rescue mission is really abandoning yourself repeatedly to feel valuable. You're not compassionate, you're just allergic to your own life. 49. People who love bomb you are showing you who they'll become. Excessive attention early isn't passion, it's manipulation. They're overwhelming you to create dependency. Once you're hooked, they'll withdraw, and you'll chase the high they gave you. Love bombing is a drug dealer's strategy. The rush is designed to make you addicted. Real love builds slowly. Intensity from strangers is a red flag, not romance. 50. Your body holds trauma your mind has completely forgotten. That inexplicable panic in certain situations is body memory. The nervous system remembers what consciousness suppressed. Healing isn't just mental, it's physical. You can talk about trauma for years and stay stuck because the wound is stored in your tissues, not your thoughts. The body needs release, not just understanding. 51. Being the funny friend is often depression in disguise. Making everyone laugh while dying inside is a common mask. The comedy deflects from the pain. If they're entertaining, no one asks how they really are. Humor becomes armor against vulnerability. The class clown is usually the saddest person in the room. They've just trained everyone to never notice. 52. Your jealousy is showing you what you want, but won't admit. Envy is information about your buried desires. You resent their success because you want it too, but don't believe you can have it. The jealousy isn't about them. It's about you refusing to pursue what you actually want. The trigger is the truth you're avoiding about your own unlived life. 53. People who constantly victimize themselves avoid taking responsibility. Permanent victim status means never having to change. If everything is always someone else's fault, they never have to grow. The victim identity is comfortable because it removes agency, but without responsibility, there's no power. They've traded growth for the comfort of blame. 54. Your inability to trust isn't wisdom, it's unhealed betrayal. Calling it discernment is just rebranding trauma. The walls you built for protection became a prison. Not everyone is the person who hurt you, but your nervous system can't tell the difference. Trust issues aren't keeping you safe, they're keeping you alone. The person you're really protecting yourself from is vulnerability itself. 55. Being defensive is proof the criticism landed on truth. Secure people can hear feedback without collapsing. Defensiveness is the ego scrambling to protect a wound that got exposed. The stronger the defense, the deeper the truth hit. If it wasn't true, you wouldn't need the walls. Your reaction is confirming what they said even as you deny it. 56. Your relationship anxiety is usually childhood attachment wounds repeating. The fear they'll leave isn't about them, it's about the people who already left. You're not responding to this relationship, you're responding to every time love disappeared before. Your nervous system learned that closeness precedes abandonment. Now intimacy triggers panic because historically, it did end in loss. You're not broken, you're just still waiting for the other shoe to drop. 57. People who refuse therapy are often terrified of what they'll discover. Avoidance isn't skepticism, it's fear. They know if they start looking, they'll find damage they're not ready to face. Staying broken feels safer than the work of healing. Therapy threatens the identity they've built around their wounds. They don't avoid help because they don't need it. They avoid it because they desperately do. 58. Your constant need for validation means you abandoned yourself. You're asking strangers for permission to exist because you never learned to give it to yourself. External approval is a drug that never satisfies because the void is internal. Chasing validation is just outsourcing your self-worth to people who can't give you what you won't give yourself. The approval you seek has to come from within, or it will never be enough from without. 59. Being brutally honest is often just cruelty disguised as virtue. Truth doesn't require brutality. People who pride themselves on harsh honesty usually just lack empathy and social skills. Kindness and honesty aren't opposites. You can tell the truth gently. Brutal honesty is often just an excuse to be mean without accountability. It's weaponized truth used to hurt people while claiming moral high ground. 60. Your self-sabotage protects you from disappointment. If you destroy it first, failure can't surprise you. It's control through destruction. The sabotage feels like proof you were right about being unworthy. It confirms the negative belief, and that confirmation feels safer than hope. Hope is vulnerability, and failure hurts less when you caused it yourself. You're not weak, you're just protecting yourself the only way you learned how. 61. People who hate being alone are running from themselves. Constant company is avoidance of self-reflection. Solitude forces you to face who you are without distraction, and that's terrifying if you don't like what you find. The need for constant noise and people is fear of the silence that reveals truth. They're not social butterflies, they're just allergic to themselves. 62. Your chronic people-pleasing is fawning, a trauma response. It's not kindness, it's survival strategy. You learn to read rooms and manage emotions to stay safe. Now you can't stop even when the danger is gone. Fawning is your nervous system trying to prevent attack by making yourself useful and non-threatening. You're not too nice, you're traumatized into compliance. 63. Being overly independent is often just fear of dependence. If you never need anyone, no one can disappoint you. Radical self-reliance is a defense against vulnerability, but humans aren't meant to be islands. The independence is protective isolation, rebranded as strength. You're not strong for never needing help. You're just still protecting the child who learned needing people wasn't safe. 64. Your imposter syndrome isn't humility. It's internalized unworthiness. Believing you're a fraud despite evidence otherwise comes from deep shame. You can't accept success because it contradicts your core belief that you're inadequate. Every achievement becomes luck or deception rather than proof you're capable. The fraud feeling isn't truth, it's just a wounded child convinced they're not enough, no matter what they accomplish. 65. People who constantly argue often feel invisible. The conflict is a bid for attention and validation. Being opposed is at least being seen. They'd rather be fought with than ignored. The argumentativeness is desperate connection, seeking through the only method that worked before. Negative attention beats no attention. The fight is intimacy for people who never learned healthy connection. 66. Your need to be perfect is fear of being rejected. Perfection is the price you think you must pay to be loved. You learned early that flaws meant abandonment. Now you exhaust yourself maintaining an impossible standard. But perfection isn't sustainable, and it's not real. The perfectionism is a cage you built to feel safe that's actually suffocating you slowly. 67. Being the strong friend is lonely. Everyone takes, but nobody gives back because they assume you don't need it. You've trained people that you're the helper, never the helped. Now you're drowning while everyone assumes you're fine. Strength became a trap. You can't show weakness because your identity depends on being the rock. But rocks erode and nobody notices until you've crumbled completely. 68. Your fear of conflict is trauma from unsafe conflict. Healthy disagreement is normal. Your terror of it isn't. Somewhere conflict meant danger, rage, or abandonment. Now any tension feels life-threatening. You've learned to sacrifice your needs to keep peace because war was too costly. But avoiding all conflict means disappearing yourself. The peace you're keeping is costing you your voice. 69. People who constantly need drama have nervous systems addicted to chaos. Calm feels wrong to them because their baseline is crisis. They unconsciously create problems to feel normal. The drama isn't happening to them, they're generating it. Chaos is their comfort zone because it's what they know. Peace feels dangerous because historically, calm preceded the storm. They trust turbulence more than tranquility. 70. Your overgiving leaves you empty and resentful. You give hoping it will be reciprocated, but it rarely is. Givers attract takers because takers can smell generosity from miles away. You're not appreciated, you're used. The resentment builds because the exchange is one-sided, but you never stop giving. You're trying to earn love that should be freely given. Overgiving isn't generosity, it's self-abandonment with extra steps. 71. Being low maintenance is often just fear of being too much. You've minimized your needs to avoid rejection or burdening others. But having needs is human. Denying them doesn't make you easier to love, it makes you invisible. Low maintenance is often high cost to your own well-being. You're not chill, you're just terrified of taking up space. 72. Your workaholism is avoiding something at home. The office is easier than intimacy. Achievement is safer than vulnerability. You're building empires to avoid building real connection. Work has clear metrics and outcomes. Relationships are messy and uncertain. So you pour everything into what you can control and call the avoidance ambition. But success can't hold you at night. 73. People who never apologize lack the security to be wrong. Admitting fault feels like total collapse to fragile egos. The inability to say sorry comes from deep shame. Being wrong equals being worthless in their mind. So they gaslight, deflect, justify anything to avoid the unbearable feeling of imperfection. The stubbornness isn't strength, it's terror of being fundamentally flawed. 74. Your cynicism is hope that's been disappointed too many times. Cynics aren't realists, They're wounded optimists wearing armor. The negativity protects against future disappointment. If you expect nothing, you can't be hurt. But cynicism isn't wisdom. It's just scar tissue pretending to be personality. Beneath the jaded exterior is someone who once believed and got destroyed for it. 75. Being chill about everything is often emotional suppression. Going with the flow all the time means you have no boundaries. That easygoing nature might be you abandoning your preferences to avoid conflict. Flexibility is healthy, but complete accommodation is self-erasure. The chill is often just freeze response in disguise. You're not relaxed, you're disassociated from your own needs. 76. Your catastrophizing isn't prediction, it's protection. Imagining worst-case scenarios feels like preparation. If you expect disaster, it can't blindside you. But the catastrophizing creates more anxiety than the actual events. You're living through trauma that hasn't happened and probably won't. The mental rehearsal of horror isn't keeping you safe. It's keeping you terrified of a future that's mostly fiction. 77. People who mock therapy are scared of what they'd uncover. The dismissal is defensive. They know they're damaged, and facing it feels too overwhelming, so they ridicule the process to justify avoiding it. The louder someone insists therapy is useless, the more desperately they probably need it. The mockery is fear of exposure disguised as skepticism. 78. Your lack of boundaries taught people how to mistreat you. Every time you accept disrespect, you train them that it's allowed. No isn't mean, it's necessary. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors you control. The mistreatment isn't random. You've been showing people what you'll tolerate. The pattern will continue until you change what you accept. 79. Being the peacemaker is exhausting and often enables dysfunction. Your mediation lets toxic people avoid consequences. You're managing everyone's emotions so they don't have to. The peace you're keeping is really avoiding necessary conflict that would force growth. Sometimes, the most loving thing is to let people feel the discomfort of their choices instead of rescuing them from it. 80. Your fear of being average is ego-protecting, wounded self-worth. Needing to be special means being ordinary feels like death, but ordinary is most of life. The pressure to be exceptional is exhausting, and it's never satisfied. Average isn't failure, it's human. The terror of mediocrity is just another way you're trying to earn worth that should be inherent. 81. People who love bomb then withdraw are creating addiction. The cycle of idealization, then devaluation, isn't confusing, it's calculated. They make you feel amazing, so you'll chase that feeling when they take it away. It's intermittent reinforcement, the same principle that makes gambling addictive. You're not weak for being hooked, you're responding exactly how the manipulation was designed to make you respond. 82. Your chronic anxiety might be undiagnosed ADHD. The racing thoughts and inability to relax could be a dysregulated nervous system, not just worry. Many people, especially women, go decades with untreated ADHD misdiagnosed as anxiety or depression. The anxiety is real, but it's a symptom, not the root. If managing your brain feels impossible, it might not be anxiety, it might be neurodivergence that needs different support. 83. Being the responsible one robs you of your youth. While everyone else was irresponsible and carefree, you were parenting yourself or others. You had to grow up too fast. Now you're an adult who never got to be a child. The responsibility was survival, not choice. You weren't mature, you were forced into adulthood before you were ready. That's theft, not character building. 84. Your people-pleasing attracts users and repels genuine people. Healthy people want equals, not doormats. Takers target pleasers because they know you'll sacrifice yourself. The more you bend, the more they take. Meanwhile, authentic people are put off by the performance because they want real connection, not someone who mirrors them. Pleasing doesn't attract love, it attracts exploitation. 85. Being emotionally unavailable protects you from intimacy that once destroyed you. The walls aren't random, they're strategic. Vulnerability meant pain, so you shut down. Now you're safe but isolated. The unavailability isn't your personality, it's protective armor from a war that ended but you never disarmed from. You're not cold, you're just still in defense mode from a battle you already survived. 86. Your need to have the last word is about control, not communication. Winning the argument feels more important than resolving it. It's not about truth, it's about dominance. The compulsion to respond to everything comes from ego, needing to be right to feel secure. But having the last word doesn't make you right. It makes you exhausting. Sometimes silence is strength, not surrender. 87. People who constantly play victim manipulate through helplessness. The powerlessness is performance. They've learned that appearing weak gets them sympathy and avoids accountability. Every problem becomes everyone else's responsibility to fix. The victim role is control disguised as fragility. They're not helpless. They've just discovered that helplessness works to get needs met without having to be direct or do the work themselves. 88. Your relationship patterns repeat until you heal the original wound. You keep choosing the same person in different bodies because unresolved trauma seeks familiar pain. The pattern isn't bad luck, it's unfinished business. You're unconsciously trying to fix the past by recreating it. But you can't heal an old wound with a new person. The repetition will continue until you address the source. 89. Being too much for some people means you're enough for the right people. The ones who can't handle your intensity aren't your people. You don't need to shrink. Dimming your light doesn't make small people more comfortable, it just makes you invisible. The right people won't be overwhelmed, they'll match your energy. Stop apologizing for taking up space. The problem isn't your size, it's their capacity. 90. Your fear of success is often deeper than your fear of failure. Failure is familiar. Success is unknown territory. Success means visibility, responsibility, expectations. It means you can't hide behind potential anymore. Success forces you to own your power, and that's terrifying if you've built identity around struggle. The ceiling isn't ability, it's fear of what life looks like, without the excuse of not having succeeded yet. 91. Constantly explaining yourself to people who don't listen is self-abandonment. Their refusal to understand isn't a communication problem, it's a respect problem. You're exhausting yourself trying to force empathy from people committed to misunderstanding you. At some point, continuing to explain becomes self-betrayal. Some people don't deserve your energy. Silence is sometimes the most powerful response. 92. Your productivity obsession is avoiding the emptiness underneath. Staying busy means you don't have to feel the void. Hustle culture gave you permission to never stop and call it success, but the exhaustion is catching up. The constant motion isn't building anything meaningful. It's running from the terrifying question of who you are when you're not producing. Rest won't kill you, but avoiding it might. 93. People who can't be happy for you are showing you who they are. Believe them. Real friends celebrate your wins without making it about them. Jealous. People reveal themselves through what they can't celebrate. Their inability to be happy for you isn't about you. It's about their relationship with their own failure. But you deserve people who cheer you on, not people who wish you'd stayed small. 94. Your chronic pain might be your body screaming what your mouth won't say. Suppressed emotions don't disappear, they become symptoms. The back pain could be carrying burdens not yours. The headaches could be unexpressed rage. The body keeps score, and eventually it sends the bill. Sometimes healing isn't medical, it's emotional. The pain is a message, and medication just silences the messenger without addressing the message. 95. Being attracted to emotionally unavailable people means you're probably emotionally unavailable yourself. Available people feel boring because intimacy terrifies you. You're drawn to the chase because catching someone means getting close, and closeness feels dangerous. The pattern isn't bad luck, it's self-protection. You're picking people guaranteed not to get too close, so you never have to face your own fear of vulnerability. 96. Your inner child is still waiting for the apology you'll never get. The parent who damaged you won't suddenly see the light and apologize. Waiting for them to acknowledge the harm keeps you stuck. Healing means accepting you won't get the accountability you deserve. The apology you need has to come from you to yourself. Release yourself from the prison of waiting for validation that's never coming. 97. People who say, "I'm just being real," are usually just being rude. Authenticity doesn't require cruelty. You can be genuine without being harsh. Real talk is often just an excuse to be hurtful without consequence. If your truth consistently hurts people, the problem isn't their sensitivity, it's your delivery. Being real and being kind aren't mutually exclusive unless you want them to be. 98. Your comparison to others is stealing your joy. Their success isn't your failure. Different timelines don't make yours wrong. Social media shows you highlight reels while you're living behind the scenes. The comparison is rigged from the start. You're measuring your blooper reel against their edited film. Your journey is yours. Their pace isn't a commentary on your progress. 99. Being the strong one means you never learned to ask for help. Strength became your identity, and vulnerability became weakness. Now you're drowning alone because asking for support feels like admitting defeat. But strength isn't carrying everything alone, it's knowing when to share the weight. Real strength is vulnerability. You've been performing toughness while breaking in private. 100. Your healing will threaten people invested in who you were. Growth means change, and change disrupts the system. The people who benefited from your trauma will resist your healing. They'll call you different. Too much changed. There, right? You did change. You stopped accepting what they needed you to accept. Your healing isn't selfish, it's survival. The ones who can't handle your growth weren't meant to come with you. Let them go. This is the psychology they don't teach. The patterns running beneath every smile and every breakdown. Understanding these won't make life easier, but it will make people clearer. And clarity is power. The mind is a complex and powerful force that shapes how we see the world and interact with others. Our thoughts, behaviors, and decisions are often influenced by psychological processes that we aren't even aware of. By understanding how these processes work, we can gain greater insight into why we act the way we do. Let's explore some fascinating psychological facts that will give you a deeper understanding of the human mind. 1. The brain can process visual information in less than 1/10th of a second. The brain is an incredibly fast processor. When you look at something, your brain is able to analyze and interpret visual data almost instantaneously. In less than 100 milliseconds, 1/10th of a second, your brain begins to process the image, interpret shapes, colors, and even emotional cues from a face or scene. This rapid processing helps us react quickly to our environment, which was crucial for survival in the past. This ability to absorb and act on visual information so swiftly also explains why people can quickly pick out patterns or detect threats, even in unfamiliar situations. 2. People are more likely to act aggressively when they feel their status is threatened. Status and social standing are deeply ingrained in the brain's social circuits. When a person's status or sense of power is threatened, whether in a conversation, a workplace, or a social setting, the brain reacts with stress and a defensive response. Aggression often follows because the brain sees this as a threat to one's place in the social hierarchy. This is why people may become defensive or lash out when they feel disrespected or overlooked. The brain is primed to protect one's position in society, and if that position is threatened, the body responds with fight or flight instincts, often leading to aggressive behavior. 3. People are more likely to act out of character when they're in a large group. De-individuation is the psychological phenomenon where people in large groups tend to lose their sense of individual identity and self-restraint. In such environments, the brain is less concerned with personal accountability, which can lead to behaviour that is out of character. The larger the group, the less an individual feels personally responsible for their actions. This is why crowds can sometimes act in ways that seem out of place or extreme. The anonymity provided by a group setting leads to a loss of inhibitions, and people may engage in risky or even aggressive behaviour that they wouldn't consider on their own. 4. The brain is highly influenced by first impressions. The halo effect refers to the tendency to make broad assumptions about someone based on a single characteristic. When you meet someone for the first time, your brain will often form an overall judgment based on a single factor, such as their appearance or mannerisms. If someone is attractive, for example, you're more likely to assume they are also intelligent, kind and capable, even if you have no other evidence to support these assumptions. First impressions are powerful because the brain is always seeking shortcuts to make sense of new information quickly. Once a first impression is formed, it is difficult for the brain to reconsider it, and this initial judgment can colour how we see a person for a long time. 5. People remember emotional experiences more vividly than neutral ones. The brain prioritizes memories linked to strong emotions. When something happens that makes you feel particularly happy, sad, scared, or angry, the brain releases chemicals like dopamine and cortisol to solidify the memory, making it more vivid and easier to recall. This emotional imprint helps humans learn from experiences and avoid danger in the future. For example, traumatic events tend to stay in the memory longer because the brain treats them as high priority, potentially life-threatening experiences. On the other hand, everyday neutral events fade from memory because they don't trigger the same emotional response. 6. Your brain is more likely to believe something if it's repeated. The mere exposure effect explains why repetition makes things seem more truthful. The brain naturally assumes that something repeated over time must be accurate or trustworthy, even if it isn't. This is why advertising works so well. Repeated exposure to a brand or message can convince people to buy a product, even if they don't have any direct evidence of its quality. The more familiar something feels, the more the brain perceives it as reliable, even if it's based on little to no factual evidence. This is why constant exposure to misinformation can lead to its acceptance as truth. 7. People's behaviour changes when they feel anonymous. When people feel they are not being observed, whether in large crowds, online, or under the cover of anonymity, they tend to act less inhibited. The brain reacts differently when an individual. This is why people even online troll a phenomenon known as negativity bias. This bias evolved as a survival mechanism to help our ancestors quickly detect and respond to potential threats in the environment. In today's world, this tendency can cause us to focus more on criticism, mistakes, or setbacks than on our successes or positive feedback. The brain processes negative information more deeply and with greater emotional intensity, which can make it harder to overcome bad experiences and easier to dwell on them. This is why negative comments often stick with us longer than positive ones. 9. Your brain works differently when you're sleep deprived. Sleep deprivation impacts cognitive performance significantly. When you don't get enough sleep, the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for higher cognitive functions like decision-making and impulse control, becomes less active. At the same time, the amygdala, which processes emotions like fear and stress, becomes more reactive. This shift in brain activity makes you more likely to make impulsive decisions, act on emotion, and struggle with concentration. The brain is essentially less capable of processing information clearly and calmly when you're tired, which is why decisions made when sleep deprived tend to be more reckless or emotional. 10. People tend to be more generous when they feel gratitude. Gratitude activates the brain's reward system, releasing dopamine and oxytocin, the feel-good chemicals. These chemicals promote positive social behaviors, making people more likely to help others when they feel grateful. Research has shown that when you express gratitude, it not only boosts your own happiness, but also encourages pro-social behavior in those around you. People who feel thankful are more likely to engage in acts of kindness, such as volunteering or offering support to others, because gratitude enhances the brain's motivation to create positive interactions. 11. The brain doesn't differentiate between physical and emotional pain. Studies have shown that both physical and emotional pain activate the same areas of the brain, particularly the anterior cingulate cortex. This region is responsible for processing both types of pain, which is why the brain experiences emotional distress as physically painful. For example, social rejection or the loss of a loved one can feel as intensely painful as a physical injury. This connection between emotional and physical pain helps explain why emotional wounds can be just as debilitating as physical ones, affecting everything from mood to overall health. 12. People are more likely to act generously when they see others acting generously. This is an example of social contagion, the idea that emotions and behaviors spread like a virus within social groups. The brain tends to mirror the actions of others, particularly in group settings. When you see someone do something kind or generous, your brain releases oxytocin, encouraging similar behaviors in yourself. This is why acts of kindness often snowball. Generosity creates a positive feedback loop where others are inspired to act generously in return. Social contagion can be a powerful force for good, which is why movements of collective action or charity often gain momentum quickly. 13. People's choices are often influenced by subtle environmental cues. Our decisions are frequently influenced by priming, a psychological phenomenon where exposure to one stimulus affects the response to another, often without conscious awareness. For example, research has shown that people are more likely to donate to charity if they're first exposed to words related to kindness or generosity, even if those words are unrelated to the cause. The brain is highly responsive to these subtle cues, making us more likely to make decisions based on external environmental factors, even when we think we're making choices independently. 14. Your brain can adapt to higher levels of stress with time. While stress can be debilitating in the short term, the brain can adapt to chronic stress over time. Through a process known as allostasis, the brain recalibrates itself to cope with ongoing stress, which can improve its ability to manage pressure. However, constant high levels of stress can also lead to wear and tear on the body and brain, increasing the risk of mental health issues like anxiety, depression, and cognitive decline. The brain's ability to adapt can be beneficial in the short term, but over time, it's important to manage stress levels to avoid long-term harm. 15. People often act based on how they believe others perceive them. The looking glass self is a concept in social psychology that suggests people shape their self-concept based on how they believe others perceive them. The brain is highly attuned to social feedback, and this influences how we view ourselves. When we think others see us positively, our self-esteem rises, but when we believe others view us negatively, our self-esteem drops. This constant reflection can lead to significant changes in behavior as we try to align our actions with the expectations and perceptions of those around us. 16. Your brain processes information faster than you realize. The brain is an incredibly efficient organ, processing information at speeds that exceed our conscious awareness. Neural impulses travel at speeds of up to 268 miles per hour, allowing the brain to absorb and respond to external stimuli almost instantaneously. For example, when you touch a hot surface, your brain has already signaled your muscles to pull away before you consciously realize the pain. This incredible processing speed helps the brain react quickly to danger and make split-second decisions. However, the brain's rapid processing also contributes to biases, as it often relies on automatic thinking rather than rational deliberation, especially in fast-moving or emotionally charged situations. 17. People are more likely to engage in risky behaviour when they're in groups. The presence of others can influence decision-making in profound ways. Social influence plays a huge role in behaviour, and the brain often makes decisions based on what others are doing, especially in uncertain situations. This phenomenon is known as group polarization, where individuals in groups tend to make more extreme decisions than they would on their own. Whether it's engaging in reckless behaviour, making impulsive decisions, or even embracing extreme ideas, the brain's desire to conform and gain approval from others often leads people to take risks they might avoid when alone. This is why risky behaviour like drinking, gambling, or thrill-seeking can escalate in group settings. 18. The human brain has a natural bias toward overestimating future happiness. The impact bias refers to the brain's tendency to overestimate how good or bad future events will make us feel. When we anticipate an event, whether it's a promotion, a vacation, or a new relationship, we imagine that the outcome will bring us a greater sense of happiness than it actually does. Once the event occurs, the brain tends to adapt to the new situation, and the happiness it brings often fades faster than expected. This is why even major achievements can sometimes feel less fulfilling once they're realized. The brain's tendency to overestimate emotional outcomes is driven by its need to predict and prepare for the future, but it often leads to disappointment when reality doesn't match the imagined scenario. 19. People are more likely to help others when they see others helping. Social proof is a powerful motivator for behaviour, especially in helping situations. The brain is more likely to engage in pro-social behaviour when it observes others doing the same. When you see someone helping a person in need, your brain releases dopamine, reinforcing the behaviour and making you more likely to act similarly. This is why volunteerism, charitable giving, and community-driven efforts often become contagious. Witnessing acts of kindness can inspire others to contribute. Social proof makes people feel more comfortable helping because it signals that the behaviour is accepted and valued in the community. 20. Your brain tends to prioritise bad news over good news. This is another manifestation of negativity bias, where the brain gives more weight to negative information than positive. Negative experiences, information, or events tend to have a greater psychological impact, and they're remembered more vividly. For example, after a positive meeting, one piece of negative feedback can overshadow the entire experience. The brain processes negative stimuli with more intensity because it is designed to prioritize threats to our survival. This bias helped our ancestors stay alert to dangers, but in today's world, it can lead to overthinking or rumination on negative events, making it harder to enjoy positive experiences. 21. Your brain is capable of changing even the smallest detail in your memories. The brain doesn't store memories like a video recorder. Instead, memories are reconstructed every time you recall them. This process is influenced by both the passage of time and new experiences. Each time you think about a past event, the brain pulls from your existing knowledge, beliefs, and emotions, which can lead to subtle, or not so subtle, alterations in the memory. This is why people often misremember details or distort past events, especially when they are influenced by suggestion or external factors. Our memories aren't as accurate as we think, and over time, the brain's natural reconstruction process can cause us to change the details without even realizing it. 22. People's decisions are often influenced by the way options are framed. This is known as the framing effect, where people make different choices depending on how options are presented, even if the underlying facts are the same. For example, people are more likely to choose a product when it's presented as 90% fat-free than when it's presented as 10% fat. The brain tends to focus on positive framing, even when the two pieces of information are functionally equivalent. This bias is used in marketing, advertising, and even politics to influence decisions. The way information is framed activates certain parts of the brain, which can shape our choices and lead us to prioritize certain options over others. 23. People are more likely to trust those who mirror their body language. The brain reads nonverbal cues to assess whether someone is trustworthy or similar to you. When a person mirrors your body language, whether it's crossing their legs in the same way, leaning forward when you do, or mimicking your gestures, it signals that they are empathetic and aligned with your emotional state. This is why people tend to feel more comfortable around those who subconsciously mirror their movements. Mirror neurons in the brain allow us to mimic others and feel their emotions as our own, creating a sense of connection and trust. This phenomenon is often used in social interactions to build rapport and establish relationships. 24. Your brain can get addicted to uncertainty. While we often think of addiction in terms of substances like alcohol or drugs, uncertainty can also become an addictive experience for the brain. The unknown creates a sense of excitement and anticipation, leading the brain to release dopamine in response to the unpredictability of outcomes. This is why people sometimes get caught in cycles of checking their phones, waiting for an exciting event to happen, or seeking out unpredictable situations like gambling. 25. Your brain can freeze when faced with overwhelming choices. When presented with a large number of choices, the brain becomes overwhelmed and can struggle to make a decision. This phenomenon, known as decision paralysis, occurs because the brain has to work harder to weigh the potential outcomes of each option. The more choices you have, the more time and energy the brain spends comparing them, which often leads to confusion or frustration. This is why many people end up procrastinating or choosing the easiest, most familiar option when faced with too many choices. Research has shown that simplifying choices can lead to better decision-making, as it reduces cognitive load and allows the brain to make faster, more confident decisions. 26. The brain can't distinguish between physical and emotional pain. When you experience emotional pain, such as heartbreak or social rejection, the brain processes it using the same regions that are activated when you feel physical pain. Studies have shown that rejection and emotional hurt activate the anterior cingulate cortex, which is the area of the brain responsible for processing both emotional and physical pain. This connection helps explain why emotional distress can feel just as intense and debilitating as physical injury. The brain doesn't see a clear boundary between emotional and physical suffering, which can make negative emotional experiences feel physically overwhelming. 27. People are more likely to take risks when they are in a group. When individuals are in a group setting, they are more likely to engage in risky behaviour than when they are alone. This happens due to diffusion of responsibility, where the individual feels less accountable for their actions because they're part of a collective. The brain perceives less personal responsibility and places more emphasis on the social rewards of fitting in with the group. In group settings, peer pressure, social validation, and a desire to conform often push people to take risks they might avoid in isolation. This explains why people may engage in dangerous or reckless behaviours, like driving fast, gambling, or experimenting with drugs when in the presence of others. 28. Your brain is wired to pay more attention to negative stimuli. The negativity bias is a fundamental feature of the human brain. It refers to the tendency for people to pay more attention to, remember, and be influenced by negative experiences than positive ones. This bias is thought to have evolved to help early humans avoid danger. Negative experiences, such as a threat or bad news, are perceived as more urgent and need to be remembered to avoid future harm. In modern life, this bias means that people are more likely to dwell on criticism, stressful events or failures, and often struggle to fully appreciate positive events. Recognizing the negativity bias can help individuals shift focus to the good things in their lives, fostering better mental health and well-being. 29. People's moods can be influenced by the color of their environment. The color of the spaces around you can have a profound impact on your mood and behavior. Colors like red and yellow are associated with heightened energy, passion, and urgency, while blue and green are linked to calmness and relaxation. These color associations happen because different colors stimulate the brain in various ways, influencing hormones and emotional responses. For example, the color blue can lower heart rates and reduce stress, which is why it's often used in bedrooms and hospitals. On the other hand, red increases heart rate and stimulates excitement, which is why it's often used in warning signs or in environments where alertness is required, like restaurants or gyms. 30. Your brain tends to generalize based on first impressions. When you meet someone for the first time, your brain quickly forms a judgment about them based on limited information. This is called the halo effect, where the brain tends to generalize a person's traits based on one positive characteristic. If someone is attractive, for instance, your brain might assume they're also kind, intelligent, or trustworthy, even if you have no proof to support those traits. First impressions are formed rapidly, and once they're established, the brain has a tendency to hold on to them, making it difficult to change those perceptions later on. This tendency can lead to unfair judgments and biases, both positive and negative. 31. People's memories can be shaped by the emotions they associate with an event. Emotions play a significant role in how the brain encodes memories. When you experience an event that evokes a strong emotional reaction, the brain releases hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, which help strengthen the memory. These memories are more vivid and easier to recall than those that are neutral or lack strong emotional connections. For instance, a wedding or graduation may be remembered in great detail because of the positive emotions associated with the event, while a routine day at work might fade into the background. Emotional experiences create stronger connections in the brain, making them more accessible when you try to remember them later. 32. People are more likely to take advice from someone they see as similar to themselves. The brain is more likely to trust and take advice from someone who appears similar to us in terms of background, experiences, or appearance. This is due to the brain's natural inclination to seek out social validation. When someone seems like us, we're more likely to believe they understand our perspective and motivations. This is why people often seek advice from friends or peers rather than experts, because they feel a sense of connection and trust with those who seem to share their experiences. This similarity bias can influence everything from personal relationships to professional decisions, as the brain tends to trust the opinions of those who feel familiar and relatable. 33. The brain uses stories to make sense of the world. Humans are natural storytellers, and the brain processes information more effectively when it's presented in narrative form. This is because the brain organizes experiences into stories, linking events together with a beginning, middle, and end. Storytelling makes complex information easier to understand, remember, and relate to. It also taps into emotional and social parts of the brain, making it more engaging. This is why movies, books, and even social media posts that tell stories are more compelling than dry facts or data. People are more likely to act on or remember information when it's presented as part of a story because it helps the brain relate to the content and find meaning. 34. Your brain creates its own version of reality based on past experiences. The brain doesn't perceive the world as it is. Instead, it creates a subjective version of reality based on past experiences, biases, and expectations. This phenomenon, known as perceptual filtering, means that two people can look at the same situation and interpret it in completely different ways. For example, Someone who has had negative experiences with a particular group might feel threatened by their behaviour, while someone without those experiences might see the same actions as benign. The brain constantly adjusts how it processes sensory information, influenced by what you've seen, heard, or experienced in the past, which is why two people can perceive the same event so differently. 35. Your brain naturally seeks out patterns even when they don't exist. The brain is highly attuned to identifying patterns in the world around us. This ability is essential for survival, as recognizing patterns helps predict future events, such as the presence of danger or finding food. However, the brain is so good at finding patterns that it often creates connections where none exist. This is why people sometimes see faces in clouds, hear hidden messages in music, or believe in superstitions. The brain's pattern-seeking ability can lead to false positives, where the brain mistakenly believes it has identified a meaningful pattern, even when there's no actual connection. 36. People are more likely to engage in risky behaviour when they're feeling emotionally numb. When people experience emotional numbness or a sense of detachment, the brain is less likely to evaluate risks and consequences rationally. Emotional numbness can occur during periods of intense stress, depression, or burnout, and it leads to a reduction in self-regulation. This emotional disconnection can make individuals more susceptible to engaging in risky or harmful behaviours, such as substance use, reckless driving, or risky sexual behaviour, because they don't feel the emotional weight of those actions. The brain's reward system may also be involved, as individuals seek out external stimuli to feel something when they are disconnected from their emotions. The human mind is full of mysteries, constantly shaping the way we experience the world. Despite our best efforts to understand ourselves, much of what drives our behaviour is hidden deep within our minds. From how we process emotions to why we make the decisions we do, the brain is a fascinating organ that constantly influences our every action. Let's explore some psychological facts that reveal the hidden workings of the human mind. 1. Your brain is capable of rewiring itself throughout your life. Neuroplasticity is a term used to describe the brain's remarkable ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections. This means that, no matter how old you are, your brain can adapt and change based on new experiences or learning. When you learn a new skill, such as playing an instrument or speaking a new language, your brain physically adjusts to accommodate these changes, strengthening the pathways related to those abilities. This is why cognitive decline is not inevitable with age. Through continuous learning and mental stimulation, the brain can remain sharp and flexible. 2. The brain reacts faster to emotional stimuli than rational ones. The brain is wired to respond to emotional stimuli faster than it responds to logical reasoning. When you encounter a stressful or emotional situation, the amygdala, the part of the brain responsible for processing emotions, activates almost instantly. In contrast, the prefrontal cortex, which handles logical thinking and decision-making, takes longer to process information. This evolutionary adaptation helped our ancestors react quickly to dangers, but it also means that we sometimes make impulsive, emotion-driven decisions before we've had time to think them through. 3. People tend to remember more vivid details when they're highly emotional. When people experience intense emotions, whether it's joy, anger, fear, or sadness, the brain tends to record those memories more vividly. This is due to the brain's release of dopamine and cortisol during emotional events, which help lock the memory in place. As a result, people often remember dramatic or emotional moments much more clearly than mundane, everyday occurrences. For example, a wedding day or the birth of a child is often remembered in great detail because of the intense emotions attached to those experiences, whereas a typical Tuesday might fade into the background. 4. The brain's memory isn't a perfect recording system. Contrary to popular belief, Memories are not stored in the brain as perfect static recordings. Instead, memory is a constructive process where the brain pieces together bits of information from the past. Every time you recall a memory, the brain reconstructs it based on fragments of sensory data and emotions, often filling in gaps with what it thinks happened. This is why memories can change over time, and why two people who experience the same event might remember it differently. In some cases, new experiences or outside influences can distort memories, making them less reliable. 5. People tend to be more optimistic about their future than others are. The brain has a natural tendency to be overly optimistic about the future. This is known as the optimism bias, where people generally believe that good things are more likely to happen to them than to others. Studies have shown that individuals tend to underestimate the likelihood of negative events happening to them, while overestimating the likelihood of positive outcomes. This bias serves as a motivational tool, helping people take risks, pursue goals, and stay hopeful about their prospects. However, it can also lead to poor decision-making if it causes individuals to ignore potential risks or challenges. 6. People are more likely to conform in social situations when they feel uncertain. The brain is highly attuned to social dynamics and will often conform to group norms, especially in situations where it feels uncertain. This is known as normative social influence, where people change their behaviour to fit in with the group and avoid social rejection. The brain's need for social acceptance makes people more likely to follow the actions of others, even when they don't fully agree with them. This is why people might engage in certain behaviours, like smoking or drinking, because their peers are doing it, even if they don't believe it's a good idea. 7. The brain often jumps to conclusions based on first impressions. When you meet someone for the first time, your brain makes snap judgments about them based on a small amount of information. This is due to the brain's need to quickly assess new people in order to determine how to interact with them. The brain relies on stereotypes and heuristics, mental shortcuts, to make these decisions quickly. This means that people are often judged based on their appearance, mannerisms, or even the first few words they speak, and these initial judgments tend to stick, even if new information later contradicts them. This tendency to make quick judgments can lead to biases and misunderstandings, especially in high-stakes situations like job interviews or social gatherings. 8. People tend to be more generous when they feel appreciated. The brain responds positively to recognition and gratitude. When someone acknowledges your efforts or shows appreciation, the brain releases dopamine, the chemical responsible for feelings of pleasure and reward. This release of dopamine motivates people to continue engaging in positive behaviours. This is why people are more likely to offer help, share resources, or contribute to a cause when they feel appreciated and valued. In relationships, both personal and professional, expressing gratitude can strengthen connections and encourage future acts of kindness. 9. The brain can focus intensely on one task at a time, but multitasking is a myth. While people often believe they can handle multiple tasks at once, the brain is not capable of true multitasking. When you attempt to multitask, the brain switches back and forth between tasks, which reduces efficiency and increases the likelihood of errors. The brain is designed to focus on one task at a time, and dividing attention between multiple tasks can lead to mental fatigue and decreased performance. This is why people often feel exhausted after a day of multitasking. It's not because they've been working hard on multiple things, but because the brain is constantly shifting its focus between them. 10. People tend to focus more on what they don't have than on what they do. The brain is wired to focus on deficiencies or unmet needs. This is known as the scarcity mindset, where individuals place more value on what they lack than on what they possess. Whether it's material possessions, success, or relationships, people often feel dissatisfied with what they have and focus on the absence of something they desire. This mindset can lead to stress, envy, and feelings of inadequacy, as the brain constantly compares what's missing to what's present. Learning to appreciate the abundance in your life and practice gratitude can help rewire the brain to focus on what is already good. 11. And another, until you're stuck in a cycle of worry or rumination or stress. When you experience a stressful situation, the brain reacts by heightening your alertness and focusing on potential threats. This reaction can sometimes escalate into overthinking, where your brain repeatedly revisits negative thoughts, amplifying feelings of helplessness or fear. Breaking out of these thought cycles requires consciously redirecting your attention, practicing mindfulness, or engaging in behaviors that interrupt the loop. 12. People tend to judge others based on how they speak. The brain makes rapid judgments about people based on their speech patterns, including tone, pitch, and accent. These judgments are influenced by hiring decisions, social interactions, how people are treated in public spaces. 13. The brain tends to fill in gaps of knowledge with assumptions. When the brain encounters an expectations rest based on what it knows or has experienced, why people sometimes remember things incorrectly, because the brain has filled in gaps with assumptions, which can lead to distorted memories. 14. Your brain can get addicted to social media. Every like form. This dopamine feed time the brain to reels incredibly sensitive to it signals to your brain that they are attuned to your behavior, creating a sense of mutual understanding. This is why you may feel more comfortable with someone who unconsciously mirrors your body language. It feels like they are on your wavelength. 16. People are more likely to make decisions based on emotions rather than logic. Despite believing ourselves to be rational beings, emotions often play a more significant role in decision-making than logical reasoning. The brain's limbic system, which is responsible for processing emotions, frequently overrides the prefrontal cortex, which handles logical thinking. This is why people often make impulsive decisions based on how they feel in the moment, even when they know those choices might not be the most rational. For example, if you're feeling stressed or overwhelmed, you might make a rash decision, like snapping at someone or buying something you don't need, because the brain's emotional circuits are in control at that moment. 17. Your brain's default mode network becomes active when you're doing nothing. The default mode network, DMN, is a network of brain regions that is active when you're not focused on the outside world, like when you're daydreaming, relaxing, or not engaged in a specific task. While it might seem like your brain is inactive, the DMN is actually busy with important cognitive functions like self-reflection, creativity, and memory consolidation. The DMN is essential for making sense of your experiences, organizing memories, and even coming up with new ideas. This is why people often have their best ideas during moments of idleness, like while showering, walking, or staring out the window. Your brain is still working behind the scenes, making connections and insights. 18. People's behavior is influenced by the halo effect, judging a person based on one trait. The halo effect occurs when people form an overall impression of someone based on a single trait. For example, if someone is physically attractive, the brain often assumes they have other positive qualities as well, such as being intelligent, friendly, or successful. The brain tends to generalize this one positive characteristic to all aspects of the person, even if there's no evidence to support it. This effect can work in reverse too. If someone is perceived negatively in one way, such as being rude or messy, the brain might apply that judgment to their entire character, which is why we often make snap decisions about people based on limited information. 19. The brain is naturally inclined to resist change. The status quo bias is the brain's tendency to prefer things to stay the same, even when change could be beneficial. This resistance to change is rooted in the brain's need for predictability and stability. The brain sees change as an unknown, which can trigger anxiety and fear. The amygdala becomes active when confronted with uncertainty, and this triggers a negative emotional response that makes us more likely to stick with familiar habits or routines, even if they aren't optimal. This bias can prevent personal growth, adaptation, and innovation, making it difficult to embrace new ideas or change. 20. The brain processes faces faster than any other visual information. Humans have evolved to be highly sensitive to faces, which is crucial for social interaction and survival. The fusiform face area, FFA, in the brain is specifically dedicated to face recognition. Studies have shown that the brain can identify a face in as little as 170 milliseconds. This rapid recognition is essential for identifying friends, family, and potential threats. Faces convey important emotional information, and the brain is constantly scanning faces to assess others' emotions, intentions, and trustworthiness. This explains why faces are often the most attention-grabbing stimuli in an image, and why the brain can instantly detect familiar faces in a crowd. 21. The brain experiences cognitive dissonance when beliefs conflict with actions. Cognitive dissonance occurs when your actions and beliefs are in conflict, creating an uncomfortable psychological state. For example, if you believe that smoking is bad for your health but continue to smoke, your brain experiences a disconnect between your belief, smoking is harmful, and your behaviour, you're still smoking. To resolve this discomfort, the brain will either change your beliefs or justify your behaviour to reduce the conflict. This is why smokers might convince themselves that they deserve a cigarette after a long day or that life is short. The brain will go to great lengths to maintain internal harmony, even if it means distorting reality or changing one's beliefs. 22. People tend to overestimate their ability to control random events. The illusion of control is a psychological phenomenon where people believe they have more control over events than they actually do. This bias is particularly evident in situations involving luck or chance, such as gambling or choosing lottery numbers. People feel more in control when they can choose or influence the outcome, even if those outcomes are determined by chance. For example, someone might feel that they have a better chance of winning the lottery if they pick their own numbers rather than having them chosen randomly. The brain's tendency to seek patterns and exert control over random events can lead to irrational decision-making and risk-taking behaviours. 23. The brain's reward system is highly activated by unpredictability. The brain's dopamine system is particularly activated when we don't know what to expect. This is why gambling, games of chance, and even social media notifications can become so addictive. The unpredictability of outcomes, whether it's a jackpot, a like on a post, or a new message, creates an emotional rush because the brain craves the pleasure associated with unpredictable rewards. The uncertainty of when the next reward will come is a powerful motivator for continuing behaviours that lead to anticipation. This is why slot machines and social media platforms are designed with variable rewards, making them so difficult to resist. 24. People are more likely to forgive others when they see them as similar to themselves. Empathy is deeply rooted in the brain's social circuits, and it is easier to forgive someone when you can relate to them. When you see someone as similar to yourself, whether in personality, experiences, or circumstances, your brain is more likely to empathize with their actions, even if they have wronged you. This is because the brain activates mirror neurons that allow you to understand and feel what others are experiencing. In contrast, if you see someone as different or other, you may be less likely to forgive or empathize with their actions, even if they are asking for forgiveness. Our brain's natural tendency to seek connection and shared experiences can significantly influence how we approach forgiveness. 25. People are more likely to help others when they feel they are being watched. Humans are more likely to engage in helpful behaviour when they believe others are observing them. This is due to the brain's desire to maintain a positive social image. When we feel that someone is watching, we tend to behave in a way that reflects well on us, which includes helping others or adhering to social norms. This explains why people are more likely to offer assistance when they're in public settings or in the presence of authority figures. Social pressure and the desire for social validation drive us to act in ways that we believe will be positively evaluated by others. The brain's focus on social approval is a powerful motivator in shaping our actions. The human mind is a complex machine, quietly shaping how we feel, act, and respond to the world around us. Even when we think we understand our own behaviour, much of what drives us comes from hidden processes deep inside the brain. From the way we interpret emotions to the choices we make each day, the mind is constantly influencing us in ways we barely notice. These psychological facts reveal just how intricate and powerful the human brain truly is. 1. Your brain protects you from emotional overload by numbing feelings. When the brain senses that emotions are becoming too intense, it may temporarily shut down certain emotional responses as a form of protection. This numbing effect is the mind's way of preventing panic or emotional collapse. People often describe feeling detached or blank during extremely stressful moments because the brain is lowering emotional intensity to preserve stability. While it may feel confusing, this response is actually a survival mechanism. 2. People often misinterpret silence because the brain dislikes uncertainty. When someone fills gaps and often assumes negative meaning simply because unemotions or disagreements can feel so uncomfortable, the mind prefers a bad answer over no answer at all. 3. The brain reacts more strongly to potential losses than to gains. This phenomenon, called loss aversion, means your brain feels the pain of losing something much more intensely than the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. This is why people stress more about losing money, relationships, or opportunities than they celebrate when they gain them. The brain evolved this way to protect our ancestors from danger and resource scarcity. Modern life still triggers the same fear response. 4. You make more impulsive decisions when you're hungry or stressed. Hunger lowers glucose levels, reducing the brain's ability to regulate emotions and think logically. Under stress, the prefrontal cortex, the part responsible for self-control, becomes weaker, while the emotional centers of the brain become stronger. This combination leads to quick, emotion-driven decisions that may not be in your best interest. It's why people buy unnecessary things, lash out, or make risky choices when stressed or hungry. 5. The brain forms stronger memories when physical movement is involved. Walking, gesturing, or interacting with objects while learning helps create deeper neural connections. This is because movement increases blood flow to the brain and activates regions that sharpen memory. Students often recall information better when they study while walking or explaining concepts out loud with gestures. The mind remembers action more easily than stillness. 6. People judge honesty more by facial expression than by words. The brain evolved to read faces long before language existed, so it gives more importance to micro-expressions than verbal communication. When someone's face and words don't match, the brain trusts the face. Even slight tension around the mouth or eyes can signal discomfort or dishonesty. This is why people often say, "I just felt something was off," even when the person spoke flawlessly. 7. Your brain prefers predictable routines to reduce stress. Even if you enjoy excitement or change, your mind still relies on predictable habits to stay grounded. Familiar routines lower cortisol levels and create a sense of safety. When routines break, anxiety increases because the brain must suddenly process new information. This is why sudden life changes, even positive ones, can feel overwhelming at first. 8. People remember negative comments much longer than positive ones. A single harsh remark can linger in your mind for days because negativity activates deeper emotional processing. Positive comments fade faster, as they pose no threat. This imbalance was vital for ancient survival, but today it leads to overthinking and emotional sensitivity. It takes several positive experiences to outweigh one negative one. 9. Your brain creates emotional associations with songs, smells, and places. Whenever you feel a strong emotion while experiencing music, scents, or environments, your brain links the two together. Later, encountering the same stimulus triggers the old emotion instantly, even years later. This is why a single song or smell can pull you back to a moment you haven't thought about in ages. The brain stores emotions more deeply than facts. 10. People tend to mimic the emotional energy of whoever they're speaking to. Humans naturally mirror the tone, posture, and emotional state of others. If someone is tense, your body may unconsciously tighten. If someone is warm and relaxed, your breathing might slow. This emotional synchronization helped early humans build relationships and avoid conflict. Today, it still shapes social interactions powerfully. 11. Your brain seeks out information that confirms your existing beliefs. This is known as confirmation bias. The brain prefers information that feels familiar or aligns with what you already believe, even if that belief is flawed. This makes it harder to accept new perspectives or admit mistakes. It protects your identity but can also limit growth. 12. People often mistake distraction for relaxation. Scrolling, watching videos, or playing games may feel restful, but they keep the brain stimulated and prevent true recovery. Real relaxation requires low stimulation, like quiet moments, deep breathing, or stillness. This is why you can spend hours online, yet still feel mentally tired afterward. The brain needs silence to recharge. 13. The brain uses emotional pain to teach long-term lessons. Heartbreak, betrayal, or humiliation leave deep emotional marks because the brain wants to prevent similar pain in the future. Emotional wounds trigger memory systems more intensely than pleasant experiences. This is why you remember painful events vividly. The mind is using pain as a learning tool. 14. People reveal their true personality more easily through writing than speaking. Writing gives the brain time to organize thoughts without the pressure of immediate social response. Without eye contact or judgment, people feel more comfortable expressing vulnerability, dreams, or fears. This is why texts, letters, or journals often feel more honest than spoken conversations. 15. Your brain finds comfort in repetition because it signals safety. Hearing a familiar song, watching a favorite show, or repeating old habits calms the nervous system. Repetition tells the brain, this is predictable, this is safe. That's why people return to familiar experiences during stress. The brain seeks emotional stability through what it already knows. 16. People often project their insecurities onto others without realizing it. When someone feels insecure about a trait, behavior, or weakness, the brain sometimes shifts the discomfort outward by assuming others have that same flaw. This unconscious projection reduces internal stress by redirecting attention away from the real issue. For example, someone who fears being judged may accuse others of being overly critical, even when no criticism was intended. Projection is not intentional. It's the brain's attempt to protect the self-image from emotional pain. 17. Your brain automatically assigns emotional meaning to neutral events. Even when something has no real emotional value, the brain creates an interpretation based on your past experiences. If you grew up around conflict, silence may feel threatening. If you grew up with warmth, silence may feel peaceful. The brain uses memories as filters, shaping how you see the world in the present. This is why two people can experience the same moment but feel completely different emotions. 18. People are more likely to act confidently when they understand only the basics of something. This is related to the Dunning-Kruger effect, where people with limited knowledge feel more confident than experts. When someone knows only a little, the brain overestimates how much it actually understands. As knowledge deepens, confidence often drops because the person becomes aware of the complexity they didn't see before. The mind is more comfortable with simple understanding than with deep uncertainty. 19. Your brain exaggerates future problems to prepare you for danger. When thinking about the future, the mind magnifies the worst possibilities so you'll be ready to respond. This protective mechanism often turns into worry or anxiety, even when the threat is small or unlikely. The brain believes over-preparing is safer than under-preparing. While this helped early humans survive, modern life doesn't require constant threat response, making the reaction feel overwhelming. 20. People tend to remember the beginning and end of conversations better than the middle. This is called the serial position effect. The brain prioritizes first impressions because they shape expectations. It also remembers the ending clearly because closure matters for emotional processing. The middle often gets blurred or forgotten because the brain focuses more on transitions than continuous information. This makes the start and finish of conversations more important than most people realize. 21. The brain struggles to distinguish between physical and emotional pain. When someone experiences rejection, humiliation, or heartbreak, the same neural pathways activate as when they experience physical injury. This is why emotional wounds feel physically heavy or sharp. The brain treats social pain as a real threat to survival. This overlap explains why emotional healing takes so long. The brain treats it as a serious injury. 22. People often feel more motivated after receiving small rewards rather than big ones. Small, consistent rewards activate dopamine more effectively than large, infrequent ones. The mind prefers steady progress because it creates rhythm and momentum. Huge rewards create pressure, raising anxiety and fear of failure. The brain values consistency over intensity. 23. Your mind automatically filters out information that doesn't match your worldview. This selective perception helps the brain avoid overload, but it also limits growth. When something challenges your beliefs, the brain may ignore it or twist it so it fits your existing viewpoint. This happens so fast that you don't even notice it. Breaking this pattern requires conscious effort and humility. 24. People often confuse feeling tired with feeling uninspired. When the mind lacks emotional stimulation, it creates a sensation similar to fatigue. You might feel drained, unfocused, or slow, not because your body needs rest, but because your mind needs meaning or excitement. True fatigue improves with sleep. Emotional fatigue improves with purpose. The brain can't function well without motivation. 25. Your brain remembers emotionally incomplete moments the longest. When something ends abruptly, a relationship, conversation, or opportunity, the brain holds onto it because it never received closure. This lack of resolution forces the mind to revisit the memory repeatedly in an attempt to understand it. That's why unfinished emotional chapters linger far longer than moments that ended clearly. Closure allows the brain to file memories away. Without it, they stay open. 26. People often feel calmer after crying because the brain resets emotional pressure. Crying activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which lowers heart rate and relaxes the body. Emotional tears also release stress chemicals, reducing internal buildup. This is why crying often leads to clarity, even if the problem remains. The brain uses tears as a natural emotional reset button. 27. Your mind imagines worst-case scenarios to protect your self-esteem. When something feels uncertain, like waiting for a response, feedback, or outcome, the brain may create negative predictions. Strangely, this is a defensive move. If the bad thing happens, you've already prepared emotionally. If it doesn't, you feel relieved. This cycle can become addictive, leading to chronic overthinking. 28. People often mistake familiarity for safety, even when it's harmful. The brain values predictability because it reduces cognitive effort. This is why some people stay in unhealthy habits, friendships, or environments. Familiarity feels safer than change. The brain prefers the comfort of known patterns, even when they cause pain. Breaking familiar cycles requires conscious intervention. 29. Your brain listens more to your inner voice than to actual evidence. Self-talk shapes your perception of reality. If your inner voice is critical, the brain adjusts your self-image downward, no matter how much external success you have. If your inner voice is encouraging, the brain builds confidence even in uncertain situations. The mind treats internal dialogue as truth. 30. People often misread others' emotions because the brain prioritizes past experiences. If someone reminds you of a past person, in appearance, tone, or behavior, your brain may automatically assign them similar traits. This shortcut helps the brain save time, but can lead to misunderstandings. You're not always reacting to the person in front of you. Sometimes, you're reacting to a memory.